So when India got its independence back in 1947, it wasn't just about freedom. It was about a massive, messy problem. How do you build one single nation out of, well, a total patchwork of different territories? That's what we're digging into today, the incredible story of how India's internal map was redrawn. It's a wild ride of politics, language, and basically figuring out what it means to be a modern nation.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the fragmented mess India started with. Then, the huge challenge of just bringing it all together. After that, we'll get into the powerful demands to create states based on language. We'll see how the Constitution tried to create a blueprint for all this, and why that puzzle is, you could say, still being worked on.
Okay, let's picture it. The year is 1947. India is finally free. But what does India even look like? Well, it's not one solid country, not yet. It's this incredibly fragmented landscape, a real mix of what used to be British provinces and all these independent-ish princely states. And get this, we're talking about a staggering 552 of these princely states. 552! And each one of them had a massive choice to make. Do they join India? Do they join the newly formed Pakistan? Or do they try to go it alone and stay independent? The stakes were unbelievably high.
And this map here, it really gives you a sense of the chaos. I mean, you had these massive, powerful kingdoms right next to tiny little territories that were just a few acres big. And it gets crazier. Some states had little pockets of their land completely surrounded by another state. Imagine trying to run a country like that. It was an absolute nightmare for everything from trade and communication to just basic day-to-day governance. So the first job, and it was a monumental one, was to somehow convince all 552 of these places to join together into one India. And the two men tasked with this Herculean effort, the one and only Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, alongside his incredibly sharp right-hand man, VP Menon.
Now, they didn't just go around asking nicely. They had a brilliant, clear-cut four-part strategy. For the smallest states, okay, you merge with your neighbors. For others, let's group you together into bigger, more practical units. The really underdeveloped ones, the central government would take over directly for a while. And the big, advanced states, they could pretty much keep their identity. It was, honestly, a masterclass in how to build a nation.
So just when you think the map is starting to look clean and make sense, a whole new challenge pops up. And this one came from the ground up, from the people themselves. It was this massive, powerful demand to redraw the map all over again. But this time, not for what made sense to administrators, but based on what language people spoke.
And this timeline, it just shows you how quickly things escalated. At first, the government said, no way. You had the Dar Commission. Then the super high-powered JVP committee. We're talking Nehru, Patel, the big guns. And they all said, look, our #1 priority is keeping the country together. They were terrified that splitting things up by language would just lead to disintegration. But then, Poti Srimamulu went on a hunger strike, demanding a state for Telugu speakers, and he died. That was the tragic turning point. Suddenly, this wasn't something the government could ignore anymore. The pressure was just immense. The government had to find a real, lasting, nationwide solution. They needed a proper constitutional framework to handle all of these powerful demands for linguistic states.
And that's what led to the landmark States Reorganization Act of 1956. This was a huge deal. It was based on what the Fazla-Kohli Commission recommended, and it completely reshaped India's map. So yes, it accepted language as a key reason to draw a border. But, and this is super important, it rejected the idea of one language, one state. They wanted to keep a balance. Plus, it got rid of all those confusing old state classifications, the Part A, B, C stuff, and created a much cleaner map. And this wasn't just a policy change. It was baked right into the Constitution.
And here's a perfect example that the 1956 Act wasn't the end of the story. See, the original Act created this huge bilingual state of Bombay for both Marathi and Gujarati speakers. But the people weren't happy. The protests continued, and so just 4 years later they had to pass another act to split Bombay into two new states, Maharashtra and Gujarat. It just goes to show how powerful these linguistic identities really were.
You know, this whole process was just filled with intense, passionate debate, and it really boiled down to one central tension. How do you build a strong, unified nation while also respecting the powerful pull of people's regional and linguistic identities? And this is the really crucial part. You can see this huge shift in thinking over time. At the beginning, the big committees were scared. They saw creating states based on language as a threat, something that would lead to chaos. But just a few years later, with the Fazl Ali Commission, there was this realization, this aha moment. Maybe, just maybe, if you actually accommodate these feelings, if you give people a state where their language and culture are central, it doesn't weaken the country. It could actually make the Indian Union stronger.
And this quote from VP Menon just nails it. He said, "The real integration had to take place in the minds of the people." It's so profound, right? Because he understood that you can redraw all the maps you want, you can sign all the official papers, but that's just the beginning. The real work, the true challenge, was building that feeling of a shared national identity in the hearts and minds of everyone. But like we've been saying, the story absolutely did not end in the 50s or 60s. Far from it. This process of redrawing the map has turned out to be a continuous journey, always adapting to the changing needs of the country.
Just look at 1971. This one single act completely reconfigured India's northeast. It took Manipur and Tripura, which were Union territories, and made them full-fledged states. And it created the brand new state of Meghalaya right out of Assam, a huge change.
And if you want proof that this is still happening, well, look no further than 2019. The Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act reorganized that state into 2 new union territories. It's probably the most powerful reminder you can get that the power to change state boundaries is a very real, very living part of India's political system.
So that really leaves us with a final, big question. As new demands for new states keep popping up for all kinds of reasons, cultural, economic, you name it, is this just the reality of India? Is its internal map a puzzle that will never truly be finished? Is it just this constant, ongoing negotiation between the idea of one unified nation and the reality of its incredible diversity?